Okay, with that, I think we'll start the meeting. So I'd like to call the organizational meeting of the Agricultural Service Board, November 10th, 2021 to order. Just to note, the meetings are recorded and may be posted on official Wheatland County social media channels. So prior to nomination of chair and vice chair, I'll just read out the voting procedure, and it's the same procedure that was undertaken at council organizational. Should there be more than one nomination for position, a secret ballot would be taken with the candidate receiving the majority of the votes declared successfully for the position. The majority with this board being 5 or more votes. In the case where a clear majority is not successful in the first vote, then the voting would continue on first and second choice only, and the third and subsequent parties would be eliminated. This process would continue until a clear majority is successful. If we're all okay with that. One other thing I would like to mention prior to nomination of chair and vice chair, as per our ASB bylaw 2019-29, item 5.2 states annually at the first board meeting following the organizational meeting, the majority of members of the board shall elect a council member to act as chairperson and a second council member to act as vice chairman for the board. And the reason that's in place is the chairman of the board does present the meeting minutes at council, and if there's any motion or anything that needs to be brought to council for discussion, the council member as chair is able to do that. So with that, I'd like to call for nominations of chair.
I'll nominate Shannon Laprise.
So just as we discussed through the bylaw, it has to be a council member.
Shannon is.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Whoops.
We were just testing you.
Yeah, I was. sorry, Shannon. We have Councillor Eichert nominated Shannon.
I understand I screw up all the time.
Yeah. So do I. Is there any further nominations? I guess I should ask first, do you accept the nomination?
I will.
Is there any further nominations?
I'll nominate Lancaster.
Councillor Reeve Lenk has nominated Kester. Do you accept the nomination?
I will let Shannon.
Okay, I'll call for third and final nominations. Is there any further nominations?
I'll nominate Rick Larson.
Rick Larson has been nominated. Do you accept the nomination?
Yes.
Okay, so we will go to our voting procedure. Okay, thank you.
Right here, buddy. Like COVID lace.
Russ, can I text my vote to Brian? Or the other line?
Yeah, that sounds good. Thank you.
Russ, can you explain that again to me about so we're electing a chair and a vice chair here, and then what was in the first meeting we have to elect a different person? Is that right?
Yeah, so we elect the chair and vice chair here. What I was describing before was just that the minutes from the Ag Service Board meetings would be brought forward to council meetings by the chair. Just as information, if there is any items for discussion that need approval, say if a motion comes here that would need to be ratified at council, then the chair would bring that forward.
I guess Rusty maybe can explain that Ag Service Board council approves all the spending or the funding.
Yeah, the authority of the ASB is whatever council bestows on the board, with the exception of being able to approve budgets or bylaws. So everything else within our approved budget, we have the authority, whether it's policies or programs. So. Okay, I'd like to declare Councillor Larson is the chair of the Agricultural Service Board. So at this point, I would turn the meeting over to you for nomination of vice chair position.
Thanks, Russ. So we'll take nominations for vice chair now.
I'll nominate Shannon LaPrice.
You accept?
I'll accept.
Any further nominations? Any further nominations? Okay, we'll move nominations cease. Shannon is elected by acclamation. Thanks, Shannon.
Chair Larson, I'll move that the ballots be destroyed.
Thanks, Amber. Motion for the ballots to be destroyed. Brian, you're going to take care of that? Thanks. Okay, so next up is the adoption of the agenda. And I'm going to assume that's the second page, Russ.
Yeah, just the adoption of the agenda of the organizational meeting.
No, the first page.
Yeah, the first page. Yeah, just our organizational meeting
Okay,
agenda.
we get a motion to adopt the agenda?
I'll move. To
Also move.
Okay, Donna moved. Anybody opposed? Carried. All right, items for discussion and related business, appointment to committees. Number 1, Agriculture Service Board Bursary and Environmental Stewardship Awards Committee.
Rick,
Yeah,
could you explain the voting procedure to some of the Ag Service Board members this first time meeting? So when we have a mixed council, some are in person, some are on the phone, we usually say if you object, if nobody objects, then the motion's carried. If somebody objects, then we do a roll call for voting procedures. So just so you know that you voted for it by not objecting.
yeah, I guess I assumed everybody knew that. My apologies for anybody that's new.
If we're all here, we'll vote normal.
We can do it more formally if you like, where we actually do vote. I think we have that, but it's more complicated, I think, than it needs to be.
When it's a hybrid, it's way easier just to go by exception.
Yeah. I'm used to have that. You have to have it moved and seconded too, but we don't do that here. So. Any questions about voting procedure before we go on? Good? Okay, thanks. So, Agricultural Service Board Bursary and Environmental Stewardship Awards Committee. How many do we need for that, Russ?
So again, as per our bylaw, just to back up that the board does have authority to appoint our own advisory committee. So 3 members and 1 alternate from the board. Generally, the board would meet once a year to discuss nominations for our environmental awards and our ASB bursaries. The last couple of years, it's been just done via email, actually, rather than coming in for the meetings. So yeah, if we could have 3 members and 1 alternate.
Okay, so do we have some nominations? Don't everybody speak at once. We can volunteer. Right?
I'll
Or
nominate
we could
Sandra
volunteer.
Smith.
I'll volunteer.
I'd be interested in being on that.
Okay, Shannon's volunteered. We need 2 more. Glenn's volunteered.
Sandra wants to vary.
Okay, so that's 3. Then we need an alternate. Okay. You're recording that, Russ? Thanks. Minutes is not my strong suit. I can read them, but I don't do well at taking them. All right, well, I think that concludes that part. So, number 2.
Maybe I'll just do a motion appointing the members as discussed, Barry, Shannon, and Glenn, to the ASB Bursary and Environmental Stewardship Awards Committee, with Sandra serving as alternate. Just so it's, and we have a motion, it's probably.
Anyone opposed? Motion's carried. Alis Wheatland Partnership Advisory Committee, PAC. How many do we need for that, Russ?
With this committee, 1 member of council or of the board from council, and then one alternate, and 2 members at large would be nominated to this, and that's per our terms of reference for our ALICE committee. It's, for those of you that don't know, ALICE is the alternative land use system, where we have funding that we can give producers. We generally have 2, maybe 3 meetings a year for this. We'll get into it a little bit more as we get out through the day and do an orientation. So yeah, we need 1 member from council and an alternate, and then our 2 members at large.
Russ, do you want to just explain for the new people what a member at large would be?
So a member at large is, or farmer members are sometimes called. The ASB sits at the privilege of council, and it's up to council to structure the board as they see fit. So some boards are made up of entirely of councillors. Some boards have more farmer members. So in this case, we do have all of council that sits plus 2 farmer members, and with the intent of obviously the grassroots being able to come and have input into the board. So.
Well, I'll move that the chair and the vice chair represent the chair and the alternate, and then the 2 members at large, Sandra De Smet and Barry Van Laar, make up the ALICE committee.
Okay, so moved. Any further nominations? Any further nominations? Nominations will cease. Is anyone opposed to this? Motion is carried. Okay, item 3, 2022 ASB meeting dates, Russ.
Yeah, so just for information, the meeting dates were set at the organizational meeting council. These are generally the meeting dates we've followed in the past. There could be occasion where there'd be a need for a special meeting that would be called of the chair. But yeah, so as of now, the next meeting date would be January the 12th. Our meetings are always on a Wednesday, generally just for half a day, finishing at noon. So hopefully those dates work for you folks. Just maybe also to note with meetings, those meeting dates, there is some conferences as well that would be coming up, like the Provincial Agricultural Service Board Conference at the end of January. There's regional conferences in the fall as well. Those can be discussed later or at another time.
And is that monthly then that it meets?
It's just by, so January would be the next meeting and then April, so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Any questions about that? Yes, Glenn.
Move to accept this information.
Thank you. Anyone opposed? Motion's carried. Okay, we'll entertain a motion for adjournment. Moved by Glenn to adjourn. Anyone opposed? This meeting is adjourned. (9:15) if you want to mark the time, Russ. Okay, we'll move on to our Agriculture Service Board meeting agenda. We'll call this meeting to order at 9:15, I guess. Just to note that the meetings are recorded and might be posted on the official Wheatland County social media channels. So can we get a motion to adopt the agenda? Moved by Glenn.
Through the chair, I do have one addition to the agenda. This is to go to item 2.3.1, 2022 BMO Bank of Montreal Farm Family Award nomination. You should have that in front of you, a paper copy. These just came in after, or this nomination form came in after the deadline for the package. So I'd just like to add that, please.
Okay, so you want to just add the form then to the, okay. Glenn, you're okay with moving it, the agenda as amended?
Amended for sure.
Okay. Is anyone opposed? Agenda is adopted. Are we going to read the minutes, Russ, or just adopt?
Yeah, just adopt them. If there's any questions that arise from anyone, I can answer them. But
Okay. And is it typical that if you weren't at the last meeting, you don't necessarily vote on adopting minutes that you weren't present for?
that's a good question. That makes sense, I guess.
All right, so someone that was at the meeting, would you like to move that we adopt the minutes from the last meeting?
I'll move approval.
Amber has moved. Anyone opposed? Motion's carried. Items for discussion and related business. It's not 10 o'clock yet.
Yeah, so we can just move on to the next item, and when they arrive, we can fit them in.
Okay, that's good. We can go to unfinished business out of the minutes, which I wouldn't know if there is any or not.
I have nothing coming up in
Nothing.
minutes. No.
Meeting's clipping along. All right, let's go to new business. Russ, do you want to speak to this Bank of Montreal Farm Family Awards?
Yes, so the BMO Bank of Montreal Farm Family Awards has been something we've been involved with nomination for a number of years, I think going back to 96. So all the municipalities in the province can nominate a farm family for this. They generally attend the first Monday of the Stampede for the award ceremony and afternoon of the rodeo. And there's usually an invitation to 2 members of the municipality, nominating municipality as well. So the deadlines for the nomination are January 31st of 2022. So just in the interest of giving everyone some time to think of someone and then to bring those nominations back to our January 12th meeting for selection. So as you can see, the guidelines, they're fairly basic. Include the selection of a family deserving of recognition for both ag and community involvement. Family must be involved in primary agriculture, have agriculture as the main source of income, and have members residing on the farm. And it's important to note that the program focuses on recognizing contributions enhancement of quality of life as a family unit. So not just necessarily the business of farming or how they farm. So it just like that the board, a motion that the board bring nominations forward to our January 12th Ag Service Board meeting.
So Russ, is there no supporting information required for why you would?
Yeah, so what I would do is historically we just had a bio of the family, and I guess the reasoning why you feel that the family would be worthy of a nomination. There's a follow-up after we make our nomination to the Stampede. They contact the family directly for more information and deal with them. So I guess as much as much or as little information as you think is necessary for everyone to make a decision on.
Any other questions about this? Okay, hearing none, I will suggest we all give it some thought and see who might be the best and get some nominations in. Thanks, Russ.
Yeah, maybe if we could just have a motion to that effect to bring names forward from.
I move that we bring names forward to our, for the January 31st, January 12th deadline meeting. Sorry.
Moved by Shannon.
Okay.
It's okay.
I'm just thinking if we could have a list of who's already been nominated.
So the package.
Any more discussion? Anyone opposed to the motion? Hearing none, motion is adopted. All right. 2021 ASB bursary selections. Russ?
Yes, so we've had 3 nominations this year, and we did just send out an email to the Diversity Selection Committee to ensure that they were in agreement with the candidates and the amounts. So we have $6,000 in bursaries that we are able to give out every year. The intent is to award to students within the boundaries of the county, obviously, that are going forward with post-secondary education in either agriculture or an environmental science related field. The 3 applicants that did put in have met the requirements for the bursary. We have a minimum $500 award and a maximum of $1,500. So the recommendation is to go forward with the 3 applicants in the amount of $1,500. It's well within our budget. They did just include the pictures and the bios of the applicants in your package as well. You have an appreciation for what these young folks are doing and what they hope to do in agriculture in the future. So,
Russ, can you remind me how we get people to apply for this? Do we contact all the schools in the county?
yeah, historically it's been primarily just through advertising, through the website, through the paper. I don't know. I don't think we got the info out to the schools again. Something we'll have to focus on to make sure we do get it to the schools for advertising. And it has been hit and miss. Some years we've had multiple applications, and some years it's been difficult to get applications. They generally do come in kind of at the last minute. It seems like the application deadline, I think, is August 31st. So I think we'll strive to make sure we advertise a little better, particularly within the local schools. So.
Any further discussion on this? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to accept these 3 candidates and award them each $1,500.
I'll make that motion.
Moved by Tom. Any further discussion on the motion? Anyone opposed to the motion? Hearing none, motion carried.
Chair Larson, just a question.
Yes.
Will administration be sharing, like, on social media or through the county connector, the successful?
Yeah, we do a press release for it as well as put all the kids' bios and pictures in the connector. So yeah, we'll make sure we get it out there.
Thank you.
Good question. Thanks, Amber. Okay, moving on to number 3, Alberta Farm Mental Health Newsletter. Russ?
Yes, this was something that came forward to Councillor Bigger from the WFCSS. I don't know if you have anything do you want to say on it, Donna, or any discussion?
No, it was forwarded to me in an email, and we didn't discuss it at any of the meetings. And I just thought it would be something maybe that we should take a look at.
Through the chair, I guess from my standpoint, I don't know if anybody has read through it, but I think part of it could be just to obviously share this info via our social media channels, which I think we can certainly do. The second part, there is Ag Safe Alberta is delivering in the know mental health literacy programs that they're wanting to do through kind of November of this year into March of 2022. So that is something that we could host if there's interest to the board. It's a 4-hour event. It says it enables participants to recognize signs and symptoms of mental distress, power safe conversations about mental health. I know I think they are doing it either in person or virtually, so there is some options there. So if there's interest from the board, we could look to host an event here in Wheatland County. It looks like they're wanting to do 30, I think, province-wide. So if there's interest, I can certainly look into that further.
Is there any other asks?
No, I think that's primarily it, is the advertising, and then, yeah, if there's interest in hosting the workshop. So
Thanks. Discussion?
I know AFSC had a workshop.
Can you turn your mic on, please?
AFSC had a workshop. I believe it was Monday, and I was going to go to it, and then I had something come up. So they are hosting them as well. So I think it's an issue that's happening a little bit more. I think a little bit more recognition for sure. So I think that's a good thing to have those workshops.
Thanks. Anyone else?
I'd fully support us hosting an event, and I don't know too, like even if the board attended, if we can break down some of the stigma around it and try and grab 3 or 4 people, like each of us, to bring. This one in particular, it might be easier for people to attend because if it's teaching strategies to recognize or see signs of, I forget how it described it, mental distress, and empower conversations, that might be easier for people to go to, to access that type of information than to go to directly seek support, because that stigma is definitely still there. We know in our ag community, we've lost members who have died by suicide in our agriculture community. And I think anything that we can do to support that element, especially with the year that we've just gone through, and the challenges that could come, I think I would fully support this. I know Do More Ag does a ton of programs and support resources as well. I know the county has shared that before and facilitated some of that as well. I don't see this as a duplication. I think the more that we can do, the better. So I would move that we agree to partner in delivering one of the events that the In the Know mental health literacy program.
Thanks, Amber. Anything else?
Would include
I'd probably leave that to administration to sort of develop the event.
yeah, So yeah, if we have a live event, we would supply the facility and the lunch for participants.
And maybe just in addition to open it up to board members and just ask board members to try and like personally reach out as well as just share in whatever networks you have to raise awareness about the event as well. I know we do that with all events, but specifically this one because it is, I think, more challenging just for people to attend events like this because of stigma. We have to eliminate that stigma. It's no different than physical health. None of us would bat an eye at going to the doctor for diabetes or, stitches, and this is no different. Neurotransmitters are, a real thing, and yeah, we need to break down that stigma. Lives depend on it, I think. So.
Any other discussion? If not, we have a motion on the floor to host this. Anyone opposed? Motion carried. Thanks for the discussion. That was really good. Okay, number 4, ASB member orientation. Russ?
Yes, thank you. So in your packages, there is an orientation manual for Agricultural Service Board members. There's also our agriculture and environment policies. So as you can see, they're fairly substantial. There's no point in me going through them and reading things out. I thought the best way to handle it would be just to do I did a presentation that would, kind of describe a lot of the things here and where we're at with the board and the department. For some of you, you'll have seen the presentation in the past as well. So, but I think it wouldn't hurt to revisit. I think what I will also do is we generally try to review our policies once a year, once every 2 years. They were completely revamped in, I think, 2020. So I would probably bring them forward to potentially even our January meeting for further discussion for any changes and more detailed look at them. So with that, I'll just go up to the podium and we'll start into the presentation. That is a department identifier that we could use for our own advertising at events, things like that. So ASBs originally were established to help with the challenges of farming. As you know, they can be many, particularly when they started out, soil conservation and weed control issues were kind of at the forefront of why there was a need for agricultural service boards. In 1943, the province worked with MD of Conrich and Red Deer, I guess it would be Red Deer County or MD of Red Deer, to establish a special ag committee. And in 44 at the MD convention, which would now, of course, be RMA, the concept of agricultural service boards was born. Wheatland joined shortly thereafter in 1946. So your role and roles of ag service boards in general, obviously as you sit as a council committee, it's sit in advisory capacity to council and the development and promotion of ag policy. And council also has an advocate for agriculture to the provincial government as well. So program development and review, obviously we look at local needs for programming and what the requirements would be. Promotion of those programs, and then just general preservation of agricultural production, including partnership with other organizations with similar interests. roles of yourselves as an ASB member, just in general, obviously to look out for the interests of the municipalities as a whole, participate in our meetings and development of our policies and programs, obtain information and about from the administration about our programs, which this will hopefully give you a good start to that. Keep confidence matters discussed privately at the ASB. We rarely go in camera for ASB matters, but I guess there's always that potential. Communicate with other members, and then to review and evaluate our programs. So the history, so we're 75 years. Just kind of an interesting thing to note. We own, as you can see on our Ag Service Board shop, we have a brand on it, and we own the Running Bargee brand. Municipalities did used to be livestock compounds for brand inspectors. So the brand was first registered in 1946 to the Municipal District of Serviceberry, 43 Rocky Board. And then over the years, obviously, the different names as we finally became Wheatland County. We're just updating our records this year to our address and have everything up to date on it. Something interesting to note, if you do look in the brand book, this is a unique brand. The G is not issued in the forward position like that because it looks too much like a C. So it's a one-of-a-kind brand, which I think is quite neat. So it's something I think we'll focus on, or maybe do a little bit of a history in our next newsletter as well. So yeah. First ASB, 1946 to 48, when we were the Municipal District of Bow Valley. The first meeting was held in February of 46 with the following members there: Harwood, MacArthur, Keir, Shear. I'm sure many of you may recognize some of those last names. Programs included the Warblefly Control Program, which warbleflies are on the Agricultural Pest Act, backsloping of old roads and seeding of ditches. And when I started, you see the old truck here with the Cyclone seeder on the back. Actually, when I started, we seeded our roads the same way. We had the Cyclone seeder like that mounted on the wheel well of the truck, and I had a rope that went to the front window that I would open. So from a safety standpoint, obviously that wouldn't fly, but it worked. So yeah, that's how we used to seed roads. In 1948, the ASB was actually discontinued for a couple of years due to a labor shortage. I actually think it was more than a couple of years. Yeah, it was 8 years. So at that point, the Municipal District of Wheatland, number 40, we were known as, and we held the first meeting of the ASB in April of 56. And you can see members were very similar. It also included the district, the DA, the district agriculturist with Alberta Agriculture, obviously, of the day. And Frank Ewing would have been the secretary of the municipality. Programs were similar. There was also some additional things. As you can see, sale of 2,4-D was one of the things that municipalities could be involved in back in the day with the advent of 2,4-D. Tree planting was a big program. Seed drill survey was the start of actually the seed cleaning plants. So as weed control obviously is a big component of our programming, what was going into the ground was part of trying to prevent those weeds from establishing. Cow control, discussed a little later. There was also a brucellosis vaccination program in place as well. 61 to 65, County of Wheatland at that point. Again, similar members. Dave Thomas, field supervisor, was my position, or ag fieldman as it's also known, was in the position. There was a specific mandate from the ASB Act at that time as to how the board, well, even before that, how the board makeup looked. So it was they raised the membership from 2 councillors and 2 advisory members to 3 of each. So in 86, just an early board. Sorry, it was this picture was taken from the paper. Might be tough to see. At the back, Herb Kaiser from Hazar was a farmer member. Arthur Christensen from the Dallam area. He was the chair of the ASB for numerous years. Bob Wilson from North of Gleason. Bob Hymas from the Rosebud area. At the end, Cal Peterson was the ag fieldman. That's who I started working for in the late 80s. And then in the front, Councillor Ron Hansen, Bill Lawson from Cheadle, farmer member. Wendy Fraser was our admin support. Maureen Boland, many of you probably remember, is our district home economist for many years. And then Charlie Hall from the Lyalt area. And then just over the years, you'll see some different faces. Obviously, there Ben Armstrong at the back, Ernie Mazer, our CAO or Secretary Treasurer, I guess it was known at that time. We had a full kind of a slate of Alberta Ag staff there. Brenda Ralston Chalmers was the beef specialist. Don Passon was the crop specialist. And then again, Maureen Boland, Elaine Degg, Kent Ziegler, and Barry. We recycled you all the way from 94.
You were coloring your
And then at the front, Councillor West, Jim Laszlo, my predecessor, worked with Jim for a number of years. He was the agriculture fieldman. Again, Ron Hansen, David Kenny, Division 6, myself, and then Shirley Reinhardt. In 95, a motion was made for all of council to sit on the board. So you see this additional members there. You see Ken Larson at the front, on the front left. The back, second from left, Abe Eitzen, and then further down the row, Leaf Phillips. So the board was quite large then, especially with the Alberta Agriculture members on it. And this was obviously at the old office in Strathmore, where Golden Hills currently resides. 98 to 2000, farmer members were phased out in 98. And again, as I said, it was just the decision of council at the day. Part of the reasoning was obviously council represents their division for whatever issue or matter that may come up, as well as has say on budget. So that was the thought of the day. Alberta Agriculture Advisory members were phased out in 02, and that went along with just kind of the restructuring of their department, where they were moving, unfortunately, a lot of the extension people that we had at our local offices, which was unfortunate. Certainly were a value to have on the board from a technical standpoint. Some different faces from a council standpoint. Vern Hoff, Steve Farthing, you'll see there. And I think, the rest of the members are the same. In 94, Jennifer Deek on the left was the new CAO. Or 2004, we had Roy Clark, councillor, Tristan Jackson, new council members, and then in the front, far right, Mike Sauvé, who was our ag conservation coordinator at the time, worked with us. 05 and 06. New members would include Ken Sauvé, Clarence Scooter, 2010 to 2016. New faces there would be Don Vandervelde, Ken Sauvé, Brenda Knight, Bernice Bland, and Alice Booth. And then we started to get back into the farmer members in 2013 or 2015 with Perry Ellis and Ken Sauvé appointed. And then obviously the previous council and our old board members with various variations over the years of number of members at large, along with council members as well. So legislated duties, there are numerous things that are legislated duties that we have passed on to us from the Minister of Agriculture. So advise and help organize, direct weed and pest control, and to a lesser extent in this day and age, soil and water conservation programs to assist in the control of livestock diseases under the Animal Health Act, promote, enhance, protect agriculture with a view to improving economic viability. So you can appreciate that's a pretty all-encompassing statement that, you know, can include a number of different things. So promote and development ag policies to meet our needs. Ag Service Board Act, so it's a piece of legislation as well. It allows for the establishment of ASBs through council, establishment of advisor committees, which we've just done, transfers authority to enforce provincial legislation to us, and it also allows for us to enter an agreement for cost sharing of certain agreements or certain activities. And what that cost sharing today amounts to is, I think, about $197,000 in funding we receive from the province. It's a reduction from, this would be about 240 in the past. Last year, provincially, the funding to ASBs was reduced from, I think it was 11.5 million down to 8.5 million for the 70 ASBs in the province. So myself as agricultural fieldman, that's what the Act states for a title. My title is different, but it doesn't really matter. That's why the appointment was made at the organizational meeting to appoint me as ag fieldman, just because then I act as the officer under all those legislative duties that we have. So Conservation Act, as you can appreciate, was born out of the early years, the dirty 30s, where we had tremendous amount of soil moved. A lot of land was broken that never should have been broken. We still do have some issues, as you can see at the bottom, with water erosion in certain cases, and even wind erosion. You can see at the bottom right there, that's a fairly recent photo. A property, a hill that was blowing. Through the 90s, we did a ton of work with extension on stubble, keeping your stubble up, continuous cropping, chem fallow, that sort of thing to help protect. And then obviously the advent of direct seeding played a huge role in helping just about eliminate erosion, at least in this area. Another big area, the Weed Control Act. So the Act does allow us to issue notices to control prohibited noxious weeds on property if necessary. Through that Act, it does allow us to enter property to inspect. It's very rare that we issue a notice. Our first goal is to always just discuss any issues with the landowner, see what's going on, to offer assistance if need be for help with what to use for control products, that sort of thing. And we're extremely successful approaching things that way. George Bloom up in the corner, he's our primary on this. Our Ag Service Officer does all the weed inspection for the county. The Alberta Invasive Plant Guide is something Sarah Schumacher, our Ag Conservation Coordinator, developed along with our weed inspector at the time, Ron Bartholow. Sarah did pretty much the whole guide herself. It was when the Weed Act changed, the province wasn't coming out with a guide or help with what species to be looking for. So we took it upon ourselves and made this guide that actually is used pretty well everywhere now in the province with municipalities and even the provincial government. So right now we're working with Alberta Invasive Species Council to update the guide and just kind of expand its use and ownership. So something that I'm very proud of from a staff standpoint, that we were able to do that. The Agricultural Pest Act. This act, there's numerous species in it where there's the minister has declared pests. And again, if it's a declared pest, we are able to issue a notice if necessary to control. The same with the Weed Control Act, we're allowed to go onto property if need be. Rats obviously falls under this. I get usually 2 or 3 calls every year about a rat. 99.9% of the time it's been a juvenile muskrat that's been run over. That you can see why people do mistake it. There's been a couple occasions where, and I think there's a later picture where we did find a rat in a hamlet. It was dead when I found it, that had come from a reptile operation. They were feeding rats to their snakes. Top right corner club root, that is something we would issue a notice on if found. The reasoning for that obviously is that we don't have very much of it here, so from a control and containment standpoint, there would be something critical to be on. Picture of the weed head is Fusarium graminearum. That used to be on the act, was removed in 2020 just because it's so widespread. It's past the point of eradication at this point through legislation. Grasshoppers are still on the act as a declared pest. It's not something I would ever issue a notice on because, again, it just depending on the year, they're absolutely every year. So from a standpoint, correct. Yeah, so it can be challenging for producers. Luckily enough, it's been a while since we've had a bad outbreak, but in some parts of the province this year, the populations were rising, so it will be something to look out for. Gophers, coyotes, both of them are just listed as nuisances, so we can just assist with programs. Of course, through gopher control, we've been involved with the strychnine, sale of strychnine, which has been deregistered, as you know. And coyotes, I'll talk about that a little bit more through when there's coyote predation problems as to what we can do. Animal Health Act. So this is a secondary role. This falls to the chief provincial vet if there is an incident, outbreak in the municipality. So we are a designated authority though, so the chief provincial vet could ask for assistance from us. I could appoint me as an inspector under that if need be. I think the primary role we would take in a situation where there was an outbreak would be from an education standpoint, or if there was a mass die-off of livestock, we would assist with finding a burial site, for example, if need be. So the last time I remember assisting was with the anthrax outbreak at a farm. This was prior to me in this role. So there was assistance from the board, I think, with vaccinating the herd and disposing of animals that had passed away. We do have a strategic plan as well, our vision and mission. I won't read through those. Along with our goals that support all those pieces of legislation that we've just discussed. Whether it's Weed Control Act, Pest Control Act. Just promoting agricultural and the rural way of life is a goal. So that's our extension program. Just being in support of our ag industry. Also, from an environmental standpoint, to increase awareness, understanding of environmental ag practices and programs. And as you'll see later, we're very active in that. And Sarah will be doing a presentation. That's Sarah Schumacher, our ag conservation coordinator. You can't quite see it. She's standing next to some purple loosestrife. It was found in a wetland, in wheatland. There is some down at the Bow River. It's prohibited noxious weeds that has a huge impact on wetlands. ASP programs in general, ag conservation. Roadside seeding is something we obviously do with any of our construction roads. You can just see in the far two right pictures is a hydro seeder. We've got various configurations where it's mounted on a truck that we can spray roads that we're unable to seed with, say, a drill. Fiber mulch and seed are put out on those slopes to hold for erosion and to get the seed on the ground. The far right one, where we're at now, is we pull a hydro seeder with a Freightliner truck. On the left, that's just a picture of, it escapes me, tillage radish. Compaction is quite often an issue with construction work, so we had for a while been planting tillage radish in the borough areas to help with compaction. And as you can see, that root, that's fairly small at that stage of the plant. It gets substantially larger, so it's just a natural way to help break up that compaction, add some organic matter back to the soil. You seed it late in the season, I think after June 15th, and yeah, it did work fairly well on those occasions.
Russ, can you tell me what a borrow area is?
So borrow area is an area when we're constructing a road, they're needing material for building the new road, which is clay. So the borrow area would quite often be out on private land. So if a hill was being taken down, topsoil and subsoil would be stripped, that clay would be used then to build the road. So that's what the borrow area would be. In those situations where we're on private land, obviously if it's cultivated land, the producer can go back and seed it to a crop the next year. If it's forage, we would seed it for them back to whatever they requested as far as seed varieties. Just some more seeding rodent pictures on the far right. That's our primary means of seeding right now is a 10-foot hay buster no-till drill. So we use it for those areas, construction areas. You can also go back and seed into, you could seed into sod with it if you wanted, but if we have to do some reseeding in areas that haven't catched or caught, works very well. Right down to a quad with a little cyclone seeder on the back and pulling harrows. Obviously that's fairly handy in our ditches. And then the bottom left picture, we do have a straw shredder if we have large areas that need some erosion control. Straw still does make sense, so we'll blow that out with the bale processor, and then we crimp it in to hold it. We do only use straw that's from the producer though anymore, just because of disease concerns, weed concerns, that sort of thing. So. Vegetation management is a huge component of our program. Roadside mowing and spot spraying along all our municipal roads. We do one full cut on every road, and then we do a second cut on 2 or 3 greater divisions later in the season. Spraying in hamlets, parks, cemeteries, waste transfer sites, gravel pits. The top picture, top left, right here is this is what we use on our, built roads and paved roads. It's 15 foot more with a Degelman swing arm that allows us to keep the tractor on the road and the unit in the ditch. Top right, our grader, 2 grader units have a shoulder cut, and you can see on the front there's a spray unit, which everybody's seen when we did our tour, at least council did. This is something that'll come up during our budget meetings. We're looking to replace these though, because of the age they're at. They have worked very well for us over the years, and obviously allows us to do 2 jobs at once, which is, from an efficiency and money saving standpoint has been pretty substantial. The bottom right picture, this is what we do have one tractor, and it's a Tiger mower similar to what's on the grader, just it's the grader one was built in-house. This is purchased. We're looking at going to this type of system and then pulling a sprayer behind the tractor to virtually have the same system as what we had with the graders. The middle picture is just treating some brush. Public Works will do brush control through the winter, and then we'll follow up with the treatment of usually Garlon herbicide to eliminate any regrowth. And then we have Jason Reguer down here, our ag foreman. This is just actually doing the yard here this fall for dandelions. We got a little Rogers covered sprayer that we use in our hamlets. Going back to the 80s and 90s, a boom sprayer. This is on the right. This was on an old International truck we used for a number of years. As you can see, there was regular T-jet nozzles, so we did have, concerns with drift, but that was the technology of the day. On the left, we have it was a 1-ton truck we used with what was called a Radiarc sprayer. It was just it would spray out a big, lots of water, large size droplets to help with eliminating drift problems. And then to our current systems, is, again, we have the grader, a Freightliner truck. On the right for following up, doing spot spraying, following up our 15-foot mower. It does have a boom again to reach out to fence line if we need to. It also has some boomless nozzles on the side and at the bottom here as well. And then middle picture is our weed inspector's truck, just a small unit, has a little boom on the at the bumper, and as well as a handgun for doing any hand spraying that may need to be done. Weed ASB programs, weed program, again, the inspections of George Bloom. We do inspection services for the villages of Rockford, Standard, and Hazar. So they appoint us as weed inspector within their municipalities. We used to do inspection for Strathmore as well, but they chose to go out with their own inspectors quite a few years ago. It does make sense, though. We have the expertise in-house to deal with this, whereas they don't. It's just not a priority for them, and it helps, eliminate things coming out into the municipality, obviously from those villages. Top right, that's what is now the abandoned CN line. There was still the rail and ties in at that point, but as you can see, was yellow with toad flax. It's pretty much cleaned up now, but just one of those kind of, transportation way that cut through the municipality that was a big vector for weed spread, and still is with not being maintained quite as regularly, but we do travel those for inspections as much as we can. Bottom, seed cleaning plant inspections. We do licensing of our 3 stationary seed cleaning plants. We collect a minimum of 20 samples through the year, check for weeds, grade those samples, and then do an inspection in the fall of the facility itself, and combine those two to give them a final score. And generally, our municipality or our municipal seed inspection plants are extremely well run. They always score in the high 90s, 98, 99% from an inspection standpoint. Just again, our weed control, our book that we produced. Biological weed control is something we have worked on in the past. On the left, bottom left, this is a field of leafy spurge that we released spurge dot beetle on, and it's pretty much cleaned that infestation up. That was on native range. On the right is a seed weevil, Sentence chamomile seed weevil that was released down at the Bow River. As you can appreciate, spraying down there is limited. So there was 2 agents released, the seed weevil as well as a gall midge that worked, that has been working quite well. The pest program, again, the strychnine program, which I've mentioned, we do pest surveys. Our grasshopper survey we do. We try to do one in every township, one every full township. So I think it's about 45 or 44 locations every year. A couple locations that birth the armyworm traps. Did 127 clubroot surveys, fusarium surveys in the past. We've collected seed heads for provincial government for testing.
Russ, did I read that there was an appeal on the strychnine?
Yeah, there is the province. I think both the provincial government of Alberta and Saskatchewan put in a notice of objection. That was in March, I believe, of this year. And we haven't heard anything on it yet. And I know part of the reasoning was not just the need for it, but with COVID, the supply was extremely limited. So if nothing else, to open it up for a couple more years because of that. There has been resolutions go forward too at Ag Service Board conferences suggesting the possibility of having farmers licensed through the farm pesticide certificate, so they can purchase it much like they would phostoxin. So it's still the best, most effective means for gopher control. I've got a picture of a raccoon there, not because they're on the Pest Act, but because they can be a potential problem. We do have them in the county. This is a dead one I found. Found one just west of Strathmore along the highway, and I found one at Nightingale, and I know there's been issues in other areas. Yeah, so
We're unloading our grain during harvest. We had 6 in the vineyard.
yeah. So like I said,
Time you see them all.
it's unfortunately, I think they're probably way more widespread than we realize. So something to keep an eye on for sure. Just the top photo there, the guys are just putting down some phosphatoxin pellets for gopher control. It is registered use. Pellets are put down the hall, ideally more in the evening to make sure everything's down. And if there's enough moisture, it releases the gas into the burrow and kills everything that's in there. So it is an option, but as far as from a use standpoint, not maybe quite as friendly, obviously, as strychnine. Again, more pest photos. Alyssa Barbero, our Ag and Environment Program Coordinator, did the majority of our club route inspections this year. And yes, the maps at the bottom, as you can see, all the data we collect goes to Alberta Ag for inclusion in their mapping. So the Bertha armyworm forecast map is live through the year, so you can see if populations are rising. The grasshopper forecast map on the left is a year behind, so it's more of an indicator of prevention or potential issues that may arise in the next year. And that's, a lot of it's weather dependent, obviously. Skunk and magpie traps. We have skunk traps we lend out to producers, $100 deposit. They're covered, obviously, for good reason. Also magpie traps that we lend out to producers. There's the rat I was talking about. It's called a fancy rat. You can see by his color. I was very appreciative that somebody called it in. On investigation, like I said, that it was a dead rat that had been thrown out. That was being used for snake food. The only people that can keep live rats in the province are laboratories, and they need a permit from the provincial government to do that. The bottom is just a bait station that we use in our hamlets for gopher control. We modified it a bit. We put these elbows on, so obviously people, kids, whoever couldn't reach their hands into it. There's a lock on the lid. It's staked to the ground. And then we use an anticoagulant bait in these traps. There are multiple feedings, not as effective as acute poison like strychnine, but it's our only option. Well, not our only. On the right, this is a Rosol or a Rokon applicator, and it's a foaming product that you put down the hole. Asphyxiates the gophers in the hole, and you put a cone so they can't get up back out of the hole. Sometimes you've seen them pop up with a little cone of foam on their head. But it's, again, for situations, whether it's the yard here or hamlets, it's another option. From a large-scale infestation standpoint for producers, it's just not practical, unfortunately, but it is an option. Coyote depredation. So we can issue toxicants for coyote control if there's predation on livestock. The photo on the right is just, hopefully nobody is bothered by this, but just it's a lamb. You can see the damage to the head and the neck from the coyote. Actually, from this flock, coyote probably killed 10 or 12 lambs and just left them. So obviously it can be an issue. Sheep are the primary concern with coyotes. They can take calves. It's pretty rare. So what we'll do, go out and investigate. We'll skin back the animal, look for puncture wounds, look to see if it's a stillborn or not. Look at the feet, look at the lungs to see if it actually was alive or if it was born dead. And we issue, the only thing we have anymore is these 1080 tablets. sodium monofluoroacetate as put in bait, like a chicken head, buried about 5 centimeters in the ground, so birds can't get at it, and try to pick a spot where we think the coyotes are coming in and take out those specific animals that are causing issues. They're going to come back, right? You'll never get rid of them completely. So permanent solutions are the answer, like fencing or guard dogs, guard donkeys, particularly obviously if you have a flock. Excuse me. Just some general programs, ag recycling. Top photo is one of our chemical container sites. Primarily, we used to look after these, our waste transfer, our people, our primaries on it. We just offer assistance, but they are at their end of life. They're overflowing, and they do need to have something done with them at some point. Clean Farms looks after these recycling, so hopefully at some point they will come up with a better solution for these. Producers are able to get large bags now and put their 10-liter jugs in those bags and bring to these sites. So that may help some from contamination standpoint. Our grain bag rolling program has been very successful. We did win an award from the Recycling Council of Alberta in 2017 for the program. That's just Sheldon Rose on our left. He's the primary operator with our grain bag rolling, and him holding up the award there. Go out, roll bags for producers, and then haul them to the recycling plant down at Green Acres Colony, and sell the plastic to them. So we do get some money from it. And then on the right, that was a picture. We did a demonstration at Ag Smart the first year they had it, I guess 2 years ago now. We did a demonstration for everyone that was there. So
Russell,
yeah.
These grain bags, you want to explain that we do it as a service?
Yeah, so it is a no charge service. We do have the producer sign an agreement when we get there, just saying that they will assist if need be and release the plastic to us. With what we're getting for the bags versus what the cost is, I think the last time I checked was around $55 per metric ton to dispose of the plastic through Drumheller Solid Waste. So it was close to breaking even on it when you considered those costs in. But like I said, it's been very well received. I think it's well worth, any money that the municipality does spend on it. What it also allowed us to do is keep an operator on full time through the winter for this program. Generally occurs the rolling from now right through till June or just prior to seeding. One of our licensed applicators on to do this program, so it's worked out really well. And province-wide, we've had lots of calls for information and look to our program for how they might operate their own. Rental equipment, numerous pieces of rental equipment. Just on the bottom or the far left, that's Jason and I from 93 planting trees. So when the PFRA used to give out free trees, we would go out, 2 people in the planter for $50, and farmer would just have to supply the tractor and pull the planter, and we would do all the planting. So over the years, a ton of trees went in to the municipality through this program. I think generally it was around 20,000 a year that would seedling trees that would be planted. We have a pasture sprayer, top left there. We modified that from an old Versatile sprayer, put boomless nozzles on it so producers could rent that rather than going out, with their expensive sprayer into a rough field and beating it up. Weed wiper that can be used when pastures graze down. Just wipe weeds, just the top of the weeds, so it doesn't use as much chemical. So obviously, like thistles will be way higher than the grass. And skunk magpie traps. We have a forage sampler that we rent out, or we loan out for free. Cattle moving and crossing signs as well, particularly if producers are moving cattle on secondaries or have a blind spot they're concerned about, they can get these signs for when they're moving. Tree sprayer just slides into the back of a truck for insect problems. That's a program we also used to do as a service. We'd go out and spray trees. We no longer do that, obviously. So there's the rental option. The tree planter again, and this unit's from like 1952. Still works. It's had some modifications done to it over the years. And you can't quite see, we put bucket seats on it, so it's a little more comfortable. And then the grain bag rolling program as well. I do have a video of the grain bag rolling that I'll show you here in a second. Again, there's the equipment, a little better close up. Just general programs. In the past, we used to look after Severn Dam. That's gone over to the Parks Department now. We used to build wooden picnic tables put out there that we were just supplying firewood to everybody out there. So at the bottom, you can see we put cement ones out there that are still standing. So we planted, on the top right, we planted 1,000 trees in the perimeter, buffalo berry, chokecherry, green ash trees that are pretty much, they're well established now and on their way. So the bottom, we put a floating dock. This isn't the greatest picture out at Severn, but this was, if you can believe it or not, those poles that are sitting on top of this dock, somebody removed those poles and they floated the whole dock over to the other side of the dam. So this was just when we brought it back. I don't know how the heck they did it, but they did it. And
Never underestimate the desire of someone that's young and has alcohol.
yeah, exactly. Might have had something to do with it. Just programs in general, a couple we've talked about already, our BMO Farm Family Award. This was the Corbill family from Clooney that was one of the recipients. AS Bursary, there Lane Neal, and then Classroom Ag program. George Bloom generally does this program in the spring, goes out and visits grade 4 classes and does a presentation. And then at the bottom, this was just a nomination from the board of Gordon Hilton to the Alberta Ag Hall of Fame, just based on his role in no-till direct seeding in the province, establishment of the Alberta Conservation Tillage Society, and yeah, so they were quite thrilled with that, obviously. 4-H, historically, we've had a scale and mats that we would lend out to the 4-H clubs. We've now disposed of them to the clubs, so they own those two items and can just share them themselves. We have the trophies out here for Wheatland West. I don't know if you've noticed in our display case. And then we've gone to purchasing animals. This year was the first year that we purchased animals at Hazar, Wheatland West, which was Rocky Ford and Standard Sheep clubs. So, yeah. Other things, just kind of general that we've done. Disaster response for resource guide for livestock. We applied for a grant for this program, had a consultant do the plan, did it in conjunction with Rocky View County and obviously our emergency services fire department here. Part of the program was development of the plan and then training and first responders. And again, COVID kind of delayed the finishing up of this, but I think last winter was kind of the final training with the fire departments in the area. So we do have that in place, and it's something we'll have to keep updated, obviously. Other things, Alberta Farmer Pesticide Applicator Certificate training we try to host every year. It's where producers can get their farmer pesticide certificate so they can purchase Toxin for grain bin fumigation. And it's a good course from a standpoint of safety and numerous things. So it is fairly tough. There is 2 exams to it. There's an exam for the certificate itself and then the Toxin extensions. So so there's a bit of work involved. Shelter Belt and Eco Buffer webinar we also hosted in in-person meeting on shelter belts. And that was to coincide with the shelter belt program, our own shelter belt seedling shelter belt program that we established. Southern Pit, we own some land in Rocky View County by Irricana. So, and we've used this as a bit of a grazing demonstration. We fenced off the Rosebud River that runs through the property, and then we put in an off-site watering system. And of course, we cooperate with producers on this. Sarah does a lot of this work. But yeah, so originally we were pumping direct from the river into this yellow trough. We had one trough that was portable that we moved to the different pastures. We ended up installing a wet well, which is the stand pipe here on the right. And yeah, it's a much better system, much cleaner, just a submersible pump down at the bottom of the pipe to water from. So it's way cleaner, the flow is way better. You know, the river would be, you know, we'd have a big rush in the spring of water, and then it would get, you know, could get quite low. So it was difficult to pump directly from there. We've added some troughs as well. So yeah, so our producer isn't having to move the troughs all the time. And we do have a lease on that property. It's still an active gravel pit as well. So we are still mining out of there. ASB programs, ag conservation programs, and just numerous things. I think I'll let Sarah touch on herself more. But we have been involved in ag environmental related things for, you know, well over 25 years. We've had a staff member on board, and we have, you know, support for programs like Environmental Farm Plan, Canada Ag Program, and then we have our own programs where we supply funding. Safe Water Wells Action is a water well abandonment, pitless adapter program, Ag Stewardship Funding Program, Watershed Resiliency and Restoration Program, which Sarah's presentation next will be focusing on. Yeah, and going right back to the early days of soil conservation, like I said, we've always had a huge role in extension. Just a general environmental program. So we do have more of a environmental focus to some programs as well. The top two pictures are just open houses we had kind of at the start of the program to see what the feelings were, obviously, of our ratepayers from an environmental standpoint. The bottom photo is what had started out as an environmental publication solely and has turned into just a general department publication as well that outlays all of our programs. And award winners from our Environmental Stewardship Awards this spring. The J. Laszlo Legacy Award was presented to the Vergauwens, the Vergauwen family. The bottom picture is the Community Stewardship Award, which was presented to John and Sue Miller at Rosebud on behalf of the Rosebud Beautification Committee. And then we also have a Youth Award, and those pictures are from 2018 to the Carsland School for their garden program. So, and then just to finish off, just our staff complement. So I got a picture here, and of course, this is the reason that we have successful programs is because of the staff that we have. You know, that is often not seen, but just quietly working there. So yeah, I certainly can't say enough about the group that we have, how important they are, and how good they are to work with. Jason Reguer here, he's the ag foreman. I've worked with him probably going on 30 years now, so he's also been with the department for a long time. So George Bloom, our ag service officer, who does our weed inspection program, also works a lot on our pest inspection program. Sarah Schumacher, who will be giving a presentation, our ag conservation coordinator, looks after a lot of our producer extension. Alyssa Barbero, who is new to her position of ag and environment coordinator, who looks after more of our general environmental programs, as well as this year, as I mentioned, she did all our club route, or the majority of our club route surveys. And Gay Mowat, obviously, who's here, who is our admin support, who keeps things running smoothly, or she tries to anyways. Sheldon Rose, one of our Greater Moore operators. He's ag sub-foreman, again, long-term employee, probably been here, what would he be, probably 15 plus years, and primary guy running our grain bag program. Bottom right, Doug Atkinson, who is our other Greater Moore operator, and he's a seasonal position. And we do have 3 other vacant seasonal positions that we'd be filling next year that generally run from, depending on the year, from April to November, that run our equipment, our mowers, do our roadside seeding, etc. Hopefully that was not too fast, but I think it gives you a good appreciation for kind of what we do. To me, without pictures and kind of it helps with the understanding of what we do. So yeah, I don't know if anybody has any questions.
Thanks, Russ, for that informative presentation. Are there any questions?
We did a few more surveys. We did 127. We focused on the southwest portion of the county where it was. We didn't find any. We sent away 6 samples that looked suspect to us, and they all came back negative. So I don't know if it has something to do with the dry year, that it wouldn't be as prevalent, which does make sense. So it's still out there. It's just a matter of time. It'd be nice to be able to do every field in the municipality at some point. I don't know if we'd ever be able to get to that, but that would be, something to look towards. But currently, I don't know if 127 fields, would be maybe 10%, like when you consider a quarter section for the number of acres we have in canola. But our canola acres are, steadily rising. So it's just, it's a matter of time. Like any disease, rotation obviously is critical to stemming the spread of it.
Russ, can I ask about the classroom ag program? Is that an active program?
The classroom ag program, it has been. With COVID, it obviously has subsided, but there was producers from the municipality as well that had been going out. There was one in particular that was participating when we were as well. So yeah, I hope it does, but
I've heard people say they wish that happened, so I don't know if they're aware that there is that.
and I think the other issue is that the school has to welcome us in too. So I mean, whether the schools are aware or not, a lot of them don't necessarily, want the presentation. The last few we've done, to be quite honest, the majority have been Hutterite colonies, which is fair enough, right? And then Strathmore, we have done a couple of presentations there as well. So historically, we have done, I have gone to all the schools in the past. We used to do a soil conservation poster contest back in the days of the soil conservation movement. So over the years, we have tried to be in the schools as much as possible. I find it very teacher specific for ones that want you in, because there would be certain teachers that would invite us in every year. And yeah, that's not quite as the case anymore, unfortunately.
Maybe there's an awareness problem though.
Yeah, it could be. I think it could be maybe something we do is just, if we went through Golden Hills, is just to say, look, we're here to offer assistance, and then they can spread that out to their schools. So yeah, we'd be happy to do it for sure. One other thing, I do have a video on the bag rolling. If you want to see it, we can do it after. We have our 10 o'clock here, obviously. So yeah.
Everybody want to see it? How long is it, Russ?
minutes, I think.
Oh, 2 minutes. Okay, how about anybody opposed to seeing it? There we go.
I think most of you have probably seen it. Okay, not even a minute, I guess, so.
Any other questions for Russ? Okay. Having said or not heard any, I'd welcome Ken Sove because I know him, and Ann Conchu. Thanks. And I think perhaps just looking at the time, we should have a 5-minute recess. So we will reconvene at 10:35. Thanks.
We had some snow. This was a couple of years ago.
Mute off.
Probably was that deep. And it was fresh snow. It wasn't a track in it. I was looking at it out the window. Somebody from Albert swooped down and out again and land into the snow and had a moose in it. It's just crazy.
Oh, you're ditching me, Ken.
Okay, so we're called back to order at 10:39, and I think we're getting the presentation of Wheatland and Area Surface Rights Society. And this is Ann Conchu for any, do you want us to do a round table? Just so you know who
That'd be
everybody
great.
is.
Yeah, that'd
Okay.
be super. Yeah, thank you.
So obviously that's Ann.
It's actually Hannah. Sorry.
Oh, Hannah, sorry. It's, as you get older, your hearing's not quite what it used
Yeah,
to be.
and I had a mask on too. So.
And let's start at the back and then we'll go around to this table. Ken, do you want to start? And for those of you that maybe don't remember, Ken was at one time Division 1 counselor.
Division 2.
Or Division 2, sorry, not Division 1, sorry. Yeah. Brad? Just who you are. Matt? Then we'll move to Barry, and then we'll just go around. And if you can, just please turn your mic on when you introduce yourself.
Sandra Smith, member at large, and I also am on this. Sorry.
Russ Muntroth, Manager of Ag and Environment.
I'm Shannon Laprise, Division 1 counselor.
Glenn Kester, Division 6 counselor.
Amber Link, Division 2.
Scott Clausen, Division 5.
Tom Aker, Division 4.
Rick Larson, Division 7, and Donna.
Donna Bigger, Division 3 counselor.
Wonderful. Well, thanks for doing the round of introductions. We're very glad to be meeting with you here today with, I guess what I understand is one of your first meetings as the new Ag Service Board. So I would like to congratulate Shannon, my counselor, for her election win, and also just say thank you to Amber for her continued support of the Wheatland Surface Rights Group. So as mentioned, I'm Hannah Conchu. I run a grain farm southeast of in the sort of deep southeast corner of Wheatland County, east of Cluny. I was looking at the map out there, and we're as far southeast as you can get before really you're into Newell County. So of course we have Ken and Sandra here too. So you've got three of 8 volunteer directors who have been working on behalf of our members for our I guess the evolution of our sort of new group, the Wheatland Surface. Wheatland and Area Surface Rights Society. So our acronym is a little bit long. So I guess to back up one step, just as Ken mentioned, this group did exist in the early 2000s to tackle other issues that landowners and farmers were experiencing with oil and gas companies. And so at that time, the issues were a little different and the group had a different name. But I think members of that organization, and Ken was one of the founding members of that group, they would tell you that the environment or I guess sort of the tone of the conversations that took place between landowners and operators or oil and gas companies was very different. There was more of a willingness to get together and discuss things and come to an agreement. And so I guess what we're finding now as landowners is that they've gotten a little difficult, and it's very hard to even get someone on the phone. And so of course, a lot of us had Encana wells at a time, but they've now, with what they had to divest and all those different players that are involved, we're working with a lot of different companies. And so some of those companies that we spend a lot of time talking about are Lynx Energy and Ember Resources. So if you fast forward to now, or I guess I'll go back to 2020. What happened was a number of landowners started receiving notices that their compensation was going to be, the oil and gas operators were suggesting that they would like to negotiate a rate that looked to be about 30 to 80% less than what landowners had previously agreed to in their dealings with oil and gas companies. And so, of course, landowners started to talk and share that information. And so then came the new evolution of this group, the Wheatland Surface Rights Society. So I guess that is why we've formed and why we're now up and running again since about August of 2020. So I know that many of you are landowners and farmers and ranchers yourselves, so you might be very familiar with what's going on. So since forming, we had about, I think, 40 people at our first meeting, and now we have about 80 plus members that are receiving our email updates and that are looking to us for support. And so what have we been up to? Well, we've been meeting with landowners. We've held a number of member meetings to hear from them what's going on in their dealings with operators and oil and gas companies. We've also been trying our best to create awareness about what's going on. And so a couple key pieces of awareness work we've done. One of them was working with a reporter from the Financial Post. And he came out to Ken's place and actually the photographer came out to Ken's place, but we hopped on a meeting with him, a number of us, and told him what was going on. And he put together a really, really fantastic article that we should share with you, covering all parts of Alberta and talking about issues at the county level and at the landowner level. And so actually that article got the attention of Minister Savage. And so because of that and a connection that she had with, a family connection she had with Ken, we've actually had two meetings with Minister Savage. And she's been really, really glad for us to share with her what's been going on. And one of the biggest takeaways that we had from those meetings with her was that she's really keen to work on the reputation that the oil and gas sector has in Alberta. And while it's unfortunate that Wheatland County landowners are experiencing these difficulties with some companies, by and large, her opinion is that most companies are above board. So she's keen to sort of keep the reputation positive, and that's what she wants. So it was good to meet with her. So we've also had a number of meetings with MLAs. Since July, we've had meetings with MLA Leela Ahir, Angela Pitt, of course, Minister Savage twice, MLA Nathan Cooper, Nate Horner, and RJ Sigurdsson. So those, getting the chance to have face-to-face meetings with our MLAs has been really important in terms of the awareness raising that we've been attempting to do, and to sort of figure out ways to move forward to sort of work to kind of balance out the power that exists right now between oil and gas companies and landowners. So I might kind of pause there and ask Ken what I've missed and what I might have sped over quickly. Yeah, I can.
I believe what Hannah's gone over is pretty well covers what we do, and I guess what's brought us here is whether it would be advantageous to put a resolution together with, have you guys, the Ag Service Board or the county council, put a resolution to take to one of the convention that's I guess the best one to approach it at. And that's kind of why we're here today. And then Hannah and I are here. Some of the other ones couldn't make it today because of prior commitments. We're here to answer any questions you folks have in regards to what we're doing. So I don't think there's anything else that we need to come forward. Questions, I hope, will cover everything else off for us.
Thanks. I guess I'll ask the first question. What's the problem that we're going to solve with the resolution?
Okay, I think that the treatment, I guess, of the landowners and lack of cooperation with the landowners. And then I also believe that a bigger issue and we don't deal as much with that as you guys do, is the oil companies not paying the taxes. I think that's foremost the most important part, and then of course everything else that goes on, and we're just trying to build a good relationship. With the last, I have the fortune of being on the original surface rights group here in the county, and then we done some work with the AMD&C at that time in regards to the Surface Rights Act, and put together a recommendation. We sent a paper to them. I don't know whether you folks have read that paper or not. Amber's passed it out to some of the MLAs for us. It's still here at the county, so if you want to have a look at that, it kind of would set a little bit of a format. A lot of that stuff is not needed to be recovered, but that's the way it went the last process.
Thanks, Ken. I guess we'll open the floor to questions for these two.
I might just add to your first question that we were maybe hoping to work with you on what that resolution would look like, because there are a number of issues, and sort of whatever is, most well suited to fit with your mandate, and that works with our, what we're trying to do as well, because there's a multitude of issues and they're all related. So weed issues, I think most of us, I can speak for my wells with Lynx, the weed control is unheard of. I have photos that would make you cringe if you know the issues that exist with kochia and, thistle and all sorts of things. But there's also, reclamation issues when wells are supposed to, they're supposedly reclaimed, but they're not effectively being turned back to being able to be farmed. And then, of course, these compensation issues. So, yeah, I guess we're just hoping to work with you on that one.
Thanks. And then just in case anybody doesn't know, most of those things are regulated. Oil companies are required to do this. And there's, I'd say, a handful of bad actors, in my experience, that probably need to be held accountable here. But any questions for these two? You guys are quiet.
Through the chair, maybe I'll just make note there. There was a resolution, I think, that went to the Ag Service Board conference last year in regards to the weed control issue that Minister Savage responded to, as well as Alberta Agriculture. And I think the gist of it was there's current ways to deal with it, which aren't likely happening though, unfortunately, just based on our experience as well from what we see.
Yeah, and actually, Russ, when it comes to even the compensation issues, all of the issues that we are experiencing as landowners, they are governed and very specifically laid out in the Surface Rights Act. But what we're finding is that Lynx is using the legislation to their advantage. They're finding ways to go around it. We've been made aware that they're actually lobbying to change some of the rules or the legislation that exists. So I think that is one of the biggest challenges that we're trying to figure out is how do you enforce and what's the stick? And so, yeah, important thing.
Glenn?
So in particular, what legislation are you trying to change? I think would be our rule, is to change the legislation or ask to have it changed. Just have a motion about the treatment of landholders is vague at most, but if we could have what legislation you'd like to change, what you'd like added to it, that would be a lot helpful in making up the motion.
Okay. Before you guys answer that, Amber, did you have a comment?
Yeah, and Ken and Hannah or Sandra may be able to speak to it better, but I think the legislation is relatively strong. Landowners do have methods to get paid. Not all landowners are aware of the processes to do that, or some of it is the tactics that are used by the oil and gas representatives. What we might consider, considering the current legislation is relatively strong, is basically just counter lobbying to industry in terms of changing it. Because I think if we don't sort of collectively make that landowner voice heard, and I think what Wheatland Surface Rights Group is doing that is incredible is just spreading that awareness around the processes. And there are people, you guys had a speaker at one of your meetings who essentially volunteers to assist people walking through some of the processes to ensure that they're getting paid fairly. Some of it is awareness. We know that you guys, when commodity prices are sky high, your surface rights compensation doesn't increase relative to that. So it shouldn't be decreasing relative to downturns in the commodity prices. People need to understand that you are being paid for loss to your agricultural operations, to impacts to your operations, and that's fair and just. And we can't let industry sort of take advantage of our egg producers. So I would see it almost as a counter advocacy to the advocacy that's happening by industry. Is sort of, Ken and I stay in pretty close contact around this issue. He's fully aware of all of the ways that it impacts us as a municipality. I did just pull up, we do have multiple resolutions from a municipal perspective that RMA is currently advocating based on. But I do think another key piece is this landowner piece. And I think a resolution can do two things. It can raise awareness about both the local work that's being done here, but also provincially, because if it goes to ASB, Ken and I had also referenced taking perhaps a resolution to RMA, but I thought it might be more pertinent to at least start with ASB. We also have done concurrent resolutions where we've gone to ASB. The Landowner Trust is an example. It went to ASB, and then we also took that to RMA so that we can be lobbying sort of on behalf of two sort of sets of voices. There can be strength in that. But if there is legislative changes as well, totally open to hearing what those are and how we could integrate that into a resolution.
Okay, now.
I think one of our main concerns is the Surface Rights Board, and it's changed to a different name now, it's Tribunal. They seem to, my recollection of the Surface Rights Board was to kind of level the playing field between the landowner that was only getting maybe $2,000 or $3,000 or $4,000 compensation for a well site to fighting with an oil company that has a resources to hire the best and most expensive defense team. And it seems like the Surface Rights Board, as I refer to it, has lost their purpose in not listening to the landowner as much as we'd like to have. And that's one of the things that we would like to see addressed in this process if possible.
Okay,
You know,
go ahead, Glenn.
when you want to challenge the oil companies, the Surface Right Board can be very onerous, to say the least. And what I find, I haven't ever went to the Surface Rights Board. I negotiated leases 30 years ago, and I don't think the parameters have changed. Trying to get an increase 10 years ago was pretty hard. Now they want decreases, but yet the price of land and inputs and grain has more than, from when I signed on, it's 10, 20 times more than what it was. So do you find there's any consideration of that at the Surface Rights Board, or is it just starting right back from scratch?
Well, I think I might speak safely for both Ken and I, who have started our, we've both been referred to the Surface Board now tribunal via the Section 27 process by Lynx. And to summarize the entire experience, it's been extremely frustrating. And I do not feel as a landowner and as a farmer that, that our position is recognized as being the underdog. So for example, we showed up to our, they call it a DRC, Dispute Resolution Conference, I think, which is, it was supposed to be a preliminary meeting where there was the potential to come to an agreement in that meeting, settle it and be done and not have to go to a full hearing. But the Lynx representative, they show up with their brass, the big fancy lawyers, and we show up with our volunteer, Paul Vassar, and it's just, you know, it's just very clear to us that there are some issues with what the Surface Rights Board was initially set out to do. So that's actually a lot of what we've been asking for in our meetings when we meet with MLAs. So things like our costs should be covered when we go to those meetings, because we're not there freely. We're there because of an expropriation-like relationship with oil and gas companies. We don't have the right to just terminate the agreement and go away. We're there because we're forced to be there, and we have these, you know, wells and leases on our land that nothing can be done about, really. So that's actually quite a bit of the conversations we've been having, and I guess I'm not sure that that's something that we could deal with here with you as partners, but it's definitely been, yeah, a huge part of the discussions that we've been having.
So are you looking then to have the current regulations enforced better, or that and a change to the legislation?
I mean, we would have to do a bit more work to look to see if there is room for there to be specific legislation changes. I think our costs being covered via the tribunal would be one of those things. But for example, the Section 27 process, that should not be something that happens often. And we've seen this campaign of Section 27s where we're all getting referred to the Surface Rights Board. And so that is the energy companies taking advantage of the legislation, not worrying about backing up the system, the costs they're incurring. They're hoping it's going to be a sort of a function of maybe attrition's not the right word, but that they can kind of, and maybe hope that we're all going to sort of back off and be afraid of the process. So they're taking the legislation and finding ways to go around it and or use it to their advantage, which I don't think we could have predicted when, you know, Ken was doing his work on opening up the act and making it more current. So yeah, I think it's probably a function. It could be a function of both things.
Any other comments or questions?
What I was hoping the board might consider is just supporting a resolution to direct administration to work with the Surface Rights Group Board in terms of drafting a potential resolution for this board to consider. As Hannah and Ken have said, and Sandra, like there needs to be more discussion about sort of what the key issues are, what some potential solutions are, where our advocacy should focus. The other thing that I think about a lot is the capacity of our egg producers. They do not have time to be dealing with these issues and attending, all of these processes just to be paid fairly. And that impacts agriculture in Wheatland County. And that's why I think it's really relevant to this board, is if there can be processes that can be streamlined. Compensation would be, I agree, that should be fair, especially in a relationship like this, where you're not voluntarily entering into this type of development. This is something that's essentially approved by the province. And so the province should be helping facilitate the compensation for the impacts to our egg producers. And we need to find a way so that it's less cumbersome and less time consuming and less impactful to our agricultural producers' capacity. That may be able to be integrated into it. I agree, some of it is enforcement of what's currently there, but it's also streamlining and likely under this red tape, for the most part, there is likely consistency. And so I don't understand, and you guys might understand more, but why every single landowner has to fight this fight. I think the Surface Rights Board is excellent because it raises the awareness that you can fight. I've heard some really frustrated people who have just signed off on major reductions because they didn't know they had an option, or they were concerned they weren't going to get any payment based on some of the tactics that the representatives have used in negotiation or lack thereof. Even not negotiating in good faith is clearly an issue, which is explicitly outlined in the Act. They just will get notification that their payments are being reduced. That is not negotiation, and that's not right. So I know that the government of Alberta listens when the provincial ASB brings resolutions forward, and they do listen when RMA brings resolutions forward as well. I thought start here because it is so relevant to the actual agricultural production in Wheatland County. So I would put forward a motion directing administration to work with the Wheatland, help me get the Wheatland Surface Rights, Wheatland and Area Surface Rights Group Board? Society. Thank you. To draft a resolution for the ASB to consider at and Russell, need your help with deadlines for ASB resolutions.
This would be an emergent resolution, so generally resolutions like it's going to go to the conference in January. Typically our resolutions go to our October regional ones, and then those ones are forwarded to provincial. So yeah, this would need to go forward as an emergent.
Will it qualify as emergent?
I think it states that it needs to be a provincial-wide concern, it needs to be something that's come up as kind of an emergency since the regional conferences, or you just have to be able to describe adequately why it didn't come forward earlier. So then it's just at the call of the provincial ASB committee whether they'll accept it or not. So as far as the deadline, I don't know if it would be close to the conference date, being that it's emergent, obviously. So it should be towards the end of January.
Okay, before we do too much more discussion, do you have the capacity to help with this?
Yes, if that's the wishes of the board, I would make time to do that, certainly. So.
Okay. So we have a motion on the floor. Any discussion around the motion? You'll find out when I chair meetings, I don't wait long. Hearing no discussion, we have a motion on the floor. Does anyone need it read back to them? Okay. Anybody opposed? Motion carried. There you go.
Chair Larson.
Yes. Just a second.
Okay,
Go ahead, Amber.
Just thinking for a contingency plan in case the resolution is not considered emergent. I don't know how strict. I know RMA is very strict. I might put a second motion on the floor for the board to consider basically the same, directing administration to bring the resolution back to Wheeling County Council for consideration to take to the spring RMA convention for consideration there.
That's probably a good idea. Backup plan. Is what you wanted to say related to that, Tom? Okay, so we have another motion on the floor to have a backup plan to bring this back to council to take to the next RMA. Would that be? Okay. Any discussion on that?
This a possibility in case or it doesn't go through the ASB, or to do it both in conjunction?
If I understand Councillor Link's motion, this would be an alternate. So if it cannot go through as an emerging resolution or whatever that's called, then this would then be enacted as a second plan. So if the first one goes through, we would not use this one. Is that correct, Amber?
Potentially, I would consider like an amendment just to have it also go to council in addition to the potential to go to ASB. And then council we would have to weigh whether we believe it is like a relevant municipal issue. I think it is because rural municipalities, it's our primary economic sector, industry. So I think there would be an argument made. So I would amend to do it in addition to presenting it to the provincial ASB. The work's going to go into the resolution anyway, so.
Does that answer your
It's
question?
a good point.
Yep.
Yeah, very good point.
So we're going to do both streams.
Right. Yeah. Thanks for clarifying that, Glenn.
Yeah, good question.
Any other discussion?
I guess through the chair, maybe just to clarify, so I would need to, excuse me, have it ready for the January 12th ASB meeting actually, rather than waiting till the conference. So then it could be brought forward at that point. So
Thanks for that clarification. So we have a motion on the floor to have an additional resolution brought to council. Anyone opposed? Motion carried. You guys have anything else you wanted to say?
The only thing where we're at with the Minister Savage right now, we had a meeting planned with her, and then Minister Rick McIver, who's was putting a paper together to take to the legislature in regards to, and we didn't know what it was involved in that. We tried to talk about maybe if we could get a meeting with it. Never got that accomplished, but from what we understand, that she was postponing the meeting, Minister Savage, with us until after that was completed, and that paper was more to do with the province being able to, or the municipalities being able to put liens against the oil companies for non-payment of taxes, and less to do with what we were promoting with ours. So that's kind of where where our position with Minister Savage is right now, and we haven't got back to organizing that meeting since that paper, and I don't think it probably hasn't gone to the legislature yet.
Thanks, Ken. And sorry, Tom, I forgot that you had a question.
How do we get in contact with, if I have any, with your organization? I just Googled you, and you don't show up on the first 4 pages. So
Yeah, well, that's been part of our efforts to sort of get up and running, but we would love to add you to our email list. So I would just take your email, and Vicki Bain would send you out emails. But I mean, you can contact, any of our directors, and we do have hopes to have a social media presence. But of course, volunteer directors, we're just working on it. So.
thank you.
Amber?
Vicki Bain is our, controller, and puts all the information together and disperses it to all the members. Regular, as needed, as needed basis. Voluntarily, very fortunate.
Yes, we are. Actually, all of the meetings that we've had with government officials are all because of Vicki liaising with government, so she's been pretty critical to our work. But it would actually be great if you're up for it, we would share our latest member update with you because, that kind of summarizes what our asks have been at those meetings and all the MLAs and government officials we've met with. So we can forward that on to whoever the appropriate person is.
Amber, you had something?
Yeah, and I'm happy to share that. If you guys are okay, I can just forward it to the whole board, and then perhaps any board members that would like to be a part of the list, Vicky's email will be on there and you can respond and ask to go on.
That would be perfect.
Russ, January 11th is the Central District 2 resolution deadline for RMA, so that should line up well. And I'll send around information on Bill 77. I believe it has been introduced, and that's the Restoring Tax Accountability that Minister Savage had referenced with your group. That's the provision for municipalities to place a lien on delinquent oil and gas taxpayers. So a mechanism of enforcement. So hopefully that passes.
Another thing, if we could, rather than us coming back into meetings, if we could, Sandra as a board member on that, if we could get her to be our representative on an ongoing basis with the beneficial to us, I'm sure.
Russ, is that permissible?
I think as you're representing constituents of the county, I don't think it has to be anything formal. So whether it's this or any other matter, that every member would be able to bring forward their information. So being that Sandra is involved with the group, I think that's appropriate. In regards to the resolution, I'd be in direct contact, I guess, with you folks anyways on that aspect. So yeah.
So if I'm hearing you right, then we wouldn't need a motion to appoint Sandra. We could just do this.
No, I don't think so. I think just to bring forward, if there's information, whether it's that or any other matter related to agriculture, is to be brought forward.
Sounds good. Anybody opposed to doing it? Glenn?
Is that a motion?
No, we decided we didn't really need a motion for
Okay.
it. We'll just do it on an informal
If
basis.
anybody's opposed to the motion, I'll wait for that, then I'll ask my question.
Well, no, I think we can have questions right now.
Okay, so mine's just a little bit different. Has the board ever considered like a class action against Lynx or Ember? Have all the producers sign on?
Okay, there's been discussion about that, but our organization is opposed to it because everyone is
Yeah.
they're not exactly similar. If you want to do a class action, I think that's one of the prerequisites is have them almost identical to everybody, especially farmers. The way they operate their land, their operation of fertilizing, spraying, and everything is near impossible. Class action.
So are you finding, me personally, I got a letter, like most everybody else does, but the roads, my interior roads, there's no change. Get paid the same. But the well sites, they can vary in how much less they're gonna pay you. So it looks like to me, because I can't get a hold of anybody on the phone that knows anything. Looks like to me they're recognizing or realizing they take up the whole road. And they have a hard time even at that staying on it. I had one go on the wrong side of a fence and drive a half a mile. And they got to the end, they just cut the fence and drove through it. I can't find anybody to complain about it. Of course, now it's easy for me to drive through it too. But that's beside the point. But the well leases, they want to offer less. Has there been any thought in saying, okay, you can pay less, but I want it resurveyed and I want the land 1 acre, and then you can have your less? Because they're going to come in and they're going to say, well, we hardly ever come in. But when you do come in with your swabbing trucks, a lot of time it's right at harvest time, and they can make a heck of a mess there, and you got nothing on it. Has there been any thought to that, or any discussions on that idea? Because looks like to me they want to renegotiate the price you're getting. And they're saying, well, we're not using the land on the lease, is what I'm thinking they're getting at. So fine, take that piece of property out and you stay on your little postage stamp if you can, and put up with the consequences. I'm just curious if there's any talk of that or realization.
I think
Just a second, if you don't mind. Just before we get Glenn's question answered, is anybody opposed to having Sandra sit as the representative for the society? Okay, good enough. All right, thanks. Go ahead, Ken.
I think there has been some gone to the tribunal hearings in that regards, and I do believe that the operators, the oil companies, have lost those proposals to downsize the actual lease site.
Yeah, and it's a good question, Glenn. We've been, I guess, first and foremost, fundamentally opposed to any reductions in size. But what they're trying to do is reduce what they have to pay you. And they're using it, they're going, under the guise of natural gas prices. Well, that doesn't fly anymore. There's no reason to be reducing my payment based on where the market's at right now. It's not legally a reason anyways, but that's what they've been writing in their letter. But we've been 100% fundamentally opposed to any reductions in size of lease because it's on title. That's what the agreement was, way back day one. So they have legal access to that amount of site as long as everything is in place. So they're trying to use the fact that they say they're not using up the same amount of space when they're going around the well as reason for reduction in payment. And so there's not really any credibility to that. 2 weeks before I'm going to harvest my field, they're in there driving around doing whatever they do, cleaning up the well. So that's been something that we've been very clear about, that there is no justification for them to somehow negotiate a smaller size of lease.
Has there been any thought to, I have a lot of time sitting on the tractor thinking, say the farmer, you come in here, you fence off your lease and look after it. I know the cost of them coming in is probably greater than the lease, controlling the weeds, and then I'm sure they'd be back in here. Somebody will be for dirt blowing around. They're going to have vegetation cover. They're going to have to mow it. It's going to be a pain on them. And I know when they clear well sites to come in and do their drilling, it's more than what the landowner's getting. So has there been any thoughts on that at your meetings? Just to get them to realize the service the farmer's providing by keeping your roads up. They never come in and fix up a road. I'm always, right? It's no different than your place, right? And you're looking after the lease site. It's always well presented. We got some pretty darn clean sites if they come and spray the weeds. But that's a service we're giving them.
Yeah, and their counter to that, which we've had lots of discussions about, if I'm spraying, I go as close up to that well as I can for weed control issues. And so they're not in there, tracking the weeds that are escapes from their site. So, but their counter to that is, well, you're growing a crop there on my allotted acres on title. So we haven't had much traction with that.
The easy answer to that question, though, is just to tell them, well, you don't have to do weed control because I'm putting the crop in there.
That issue's been brought up over the years, and it seems like it resurfaces every once in a while, and then it goes back to, well, maybe we should be just happy with the farmer looking after it as good as he does and whatnot. But in regards to what was mentioned before about the article in the paper and the picture that they took and put in the papers, Lynx was really upset with that because they could see the Lynx sign on the site that we did, but they should be happy that I didn't take them to the one with the kochia weed was up to your armpits on.
Got a couple of them too.
Does anybody else have any questions? Okay, if not, thanks Hannah and Ken. That was a great presentation.
Yeah, well, thank you for your time. We appreciate getting on your agenda today, and we look forward to working on these resolutions. So, Russ, maybe we'll leave our contact information for you. Thanks again, everybody.
Thanks.
Thanks for coming in.
Thanks.
Nice seeing you again.
Just good memories? Just good memories?
All right, thanks again.
Take care.
Okay, we'll move back to our agenda. We are, I believe, at 4.2, Russ, are we? Or 4?
We should be at 5 actually.
Oh, okay.
So yeah. I don't know if Sarah, are you on the line, Sarah? She has a presentation for the Crowfoot Creek WRP.
Yep, I'm here.
I know that guy in that picture.
Go ahead whenever you're ready. So Sarah's our Ag Conservation Coordinator, and this is just a wrap-up report on some funding we got through WRP grant programming, and she may touch on some of our other programming as well.
Okay, thanks, Russ. Good morning and welcome to all of the new ASB members. Please feel free to interrupt me if you have any questions during my presentation, as I'm going to cover a lot of information in a short period of time. So in 2017, Wheatland County and the Western Irrigation District applied for funding through Alberta Environment's Watershed Resiliency and Restoration Program for funding for projects in the Crowfoot watershed that help to protect and restore riparian stream bank health. So riparian areas, if you don't know them, are the lands adjacent to streams, rivers, lakes, and wetlands where the vegetation and soils are influenced by the presence of water. So they make up just a small portion of the land, but they are amongst the most productive and valuable of all landscapes for forage production, water quality, bank stability, and flood and drought protection, and wildlife habitat. So this slide has a picture of Doug Clark. Doug and his son Wes have installed fencing, which enables them to better manage their pasture, which is adjacent to the Crowfoot Creek. And they also have numerous off-site watering systems. Next slide, please. So livestock can impact the stream bank or riparian areas by removing the deep-rooted binding shrubs and grasses, and they can physically alter the structure of the bank by hoof shear. They can impact water quality by creating unstable bare ground that can contribute to sedimentation of the creek during rainfall and flood events. And also the loss of vegetation removes the barrier, preventing contaminants from entering a creek. And they also defecate and urinate directly in the water. So the project objectives were to restore and protect the function of riparian areas, increase water storage capacity for flood and drought resiliency, enhance water quality by reducing contact between livestock and riparian areas, and to facilitate education and stewardship opportunities. So a lot of these objectives are straight out of the guidelines for the grant. Slide 3, please. So funding was available to landowners adjacent to the Crowfoot Creek and any of its tributaries who were allowing livestock to directly access the creek as a water supply. So this grant funded riparian fencing and of the creek, which either increases the ability to manage the livestock or to completely exclude the livestock from that area adjacent to the creek. We also funded off-site watering systems, which are basic pumping systems that are solar powered. We also funded livestock waters for the utilization of new or existing water sources, such as a dugout or a remote well. Slide 4, please. So, fencing projects for managing livestock access to riparian areas can help to improve vegetation health, riparian function, as well as improved habitat and water quality. The achievements of this project were just over 16,000 meters of riparian fence, which of almost just a little bit more than 8,000 meters of creeks and canals. The irrigation district fenced just over 8,000 meters along their canal as well, for a total cost of $76,000. And then there was, okay, I made a mistake there. Anyways, we didn't do quite as much fencing as we had planned because the year our project started, there was a really big flood in the Crowfoot Creek. And I think it highlighted how riparian fencing would be at risk of those flood events. So we worked with some landowners, did some electric fencing, which is a little bit, easier to put back in place. And then we also discussed options for what we call a riparian pasture, where you set your fence line back quite far from the creek, and it just allows you to manage that more sensitive area a little bit differently. So using it when it's dry or allowing it to rest a little bit longer than some of the other pastures. Okay, slide 5, please. So the installation of off-site watering systems can limit or eliminate direct access by livestock to the creek or other water sources. It helps to reduce the buildup and the buildup of manure in the riparian area as well, which carries nutrients and pathogens, so that can help to protect water quality. And it also can help keep the animals out of the riparian area during calving and in the wintertime when the manure can sit on frozen ground and then will be washed into the creek in the spring runoff. So we funded 14 off-site watering systems for a total cost of just over $96,000. And the WID installed an additional 5 off-site watering systems, and then Wheatland County also funded 1 off-site watering system through the Wheatland Agricultural Stewardship Program, which is a program that we have which will fund projects that landowners do that benefit water quality, soil health, air quality, habitat management, so kind of any of those types of things we'll consider. So this project, slide 6, please. So this project impacted a total of 38,843 meters, so pretty happy with the outcome of that number. And you can see this picture here is actually at Doug Clark's as well. You can see there's his little blue watering system in the bottom right-hand corner there. And he has this loop on the bottom left-hand corner is fenced off. And this is the Crowfoot Creek here. Slide 7, please. So we had 13 farms involved in this program, and it was a really good opportunity to get to know all the landowners, a lot of the landowners in the watershed, and they've implemented some practices which help to restore and improve the resiliency of the Crowfoot watershed. Slide 8, please. So if you haven't come across them in your travels, Cows and Fish is an Alberta nonprofit organization who works across the province engaging land managers and assisting them with riparian management. They also play an important role in assessing the health of riparian areas. We've worked closely with them over the years, and they've supported many of our projects and programs. So we hired them to do a detailed health inventory of each project that was funded, and the inventory thoroughly examines vegetation, soil, and hydrology of the area. It's used to capture baseline information for evaluating the impact of management over time, and it provides an opportunity for education and increasing the understanding of what the issues might be in a riparian area and how to change those management practices to positively impact that riparian health. So Cows and Fish assessed 13 sites. We pay half and they pay the other half. They delivered us, each landowner got their own specific report for their own site, and then they did Crowfoot watershed riparian health kind of report card for all the projects combined. So 37.5% of the sites were considered unhealthy with problems. This might be some trailing, some missing of certain types of plants like shrubs and trees, or deep binding grasses. And then 50% were unhealthy. These sites probably had quite a lot of bare ground. They might have a lot of invasive species. So that might be what an unhealthy site would look like. And 12% were healthy. I suspect that maybe some of these sites were non-use areas. Slide 9, please. So Alice Wheatland. Alice is a national nonprofit organization, but it's operated by communities at a community level. There are 16 communities in Alberta that have an Alice program, and 31 across Canada. Wheatland County is one of the only ones in southern Alberta. The rest are in more northern counties. The program pays for management and maintenance of ecosystem services such as water quality, water storage, carbon storage, and wildlife habitat on marginal farmland. So funding comes from many different sponsors. Currently, the Alice Wheatland funding comes from the federal grants from the Department of Fisheries and Oceans and the Eco Action Community Funding Program, as well as a significant portion of our funding comes from the Calgary Foundation, and as well as the Weston Foundation, Cargill and A&W, RBC, and Intact Insurance. So some of these you'll notice they're corporate sponsors. So this funding, they're often tied to food production, and they use this sponsorship as part of their corporate social responsibility programs. So in the Crowfoot watershed, there are 12 Alice projects on 10 farms, which amounts of 411 acres that are enrolled in the program. These landowners receive an annual payment for their projects for a 5-year term, recognizing the effort it takes for more intensive grazing management, to use and to move the off-site watering systems, maintaining fencing, or loss of grazing land if the area has been excluded. Slide 10, please. So we utilize many different extension events to both promote our programs and different types of projects and the benefits of using these systems of grazing management and fencing and off-site watering systems. We've provided access to very knowledgeable speakers on grazing management, such as Jim Garish, who comes from the United States, and fencing and livestock watering systems. The next slide, please. We've also utilized many different avenues of communications for this project. One of the most powerful was we hired a professional photographer using an Alice grant, and he photographed 5 farms along the Crowfoot Creek. And he also had a drone, which enabled us to capture some different angles of the project that we wouldn't have had otherwise. So that was a really great tool. After that, we decided to purchase a drone for the ALICE program, and we've been using it for all of our projects in all of our other funding programs. So it's really valuable to be able to get that bird's eye perspective of a project. Slide 12, please. So I'm so grateful to have worked with these landowners in the Crowfoot watershed. They're leaders in the community and play a valuable role in protecting the creek and the riparian areas, water quality, wildlife habitat, and also in helping to drive these projects so that they're a standard in the livestock industry. We're also currently working with the Western Irrigation District and Rocky View County with a similar grant program in the Rosebud watershed. So that includes the Severn Dam and the Serviceberry Creek and the Severn Creek. So that's all I have on this project. If you have any questions, please let me know.
Thanks for that presentation. Is there any questions? Glenn?
Hi, Sarah. It's Glenn. I am curious, before the project started, was there any testing done or assessment done, and what the improvement has been?
We hadn't done any water quality, although Alberta Environment does do some testing of the Crowfoot Creek. I think it would be really hard to identify where the changes in water quality are coming from. And, it could be from, it's so variable, based on how much rainfall you get in a year and other practices that might be changing in in crop production. And so it might be really hard to assess the actual change in water quality. I think assessing by the riparian health inventory is probably a better way of assessing change.
Okay, I don't know if we're still actively taking water samples. I know a few years ago we were taking samples of the Serviceberry when it come into the county, when it got to Rocky Ford, and when it left the county, and the different values. Yeah. How we'd see a change.
Yeah, we haven't done that water quality monitoring for quite a few years now. So yeah, we don't have that information.
I guess through the chair, there is that baseline. I think we started in about 96 with testing, kind of the advent of the Crowfoot Creek Watershed Group. So there would be that baseline data that could be looked at if we ever went down that road again and started testing. So.
For sure, yeah. And we did the sampling in the Rosebud and the Serviceberry, but in my time here in 15 years in Wheatland County, I've never sampled in the Crowfoot, so that data would be over 15 years for sure.
Well, we have the baseline. If it would be good PR to do a water sample now and see what the improvements are. Just, for PR purposes. I found it quite interesting, the service brewery. Oh, sorry, Sarah, I didn't hear you.
No, that's fine.
I found it quite interesting for the board. We used to test the service berry coming into the county. It was pretty decent. And got to Rocky Ford, it wasn't so good anymore. And when it left the county, it was almost the same quality as when it come in. So it's the different uses along it, right? So I guess the stream can rehabilitate itself if it's given a chance. And that's all we're doing here with the Crowfoot. We're giving it a chance. Thanks, Sarah.
Any other
Yeah,
questions?
thanks, Glenn.
Hearing none. Thanks again for the presentation, Sarah. It was very good.
Okay. Thanks very much.
Yeah, we got time to keep going. Okay, so we'll be on to reports and related business. Us?
I think you've probably heard enough from me today, so I'm not going to go through too much of this. This is also presented at council as well, the report. So just I'll touch just on a couple of things quickly, just in regards to, I'd mentioned the villages of Rocky Ford Standard and Czar, where we have agreements for their weed inspection. Those agreements are up at the end of the year, so we'll be revisiting that and bringing forward in January. So hopefully we can continue with that program. The seed plant licensing, as I mentioned, was done. And all the plants did score 99% on their license. Seedling, Shelter Belt and Eco Buffer seedling program this year, we saw 3,837 trees planted. And just on the pictures in the next page, I don't know if you'll notice the ALA signs that we do have out in the front yard now. And that's the program Sarah was referring to, which we do have at the committee. And the last advertisement page, Preparing for Canada Gap webinar series, is just a program that we're participating with Leduc Parkland and Red Deer on, and it is primarily vegetable growers, a webinar for them. I know we don't have a lot, but I think there is getting to be more. And it's quite an intensive program through the winter. I think there's 6 weeks, and they're 3-hour sessions, so it's quite intensive, and we've just started advertising for that. So with that, I think I'll leave my report at that if there's any questions.
Any questions for Russ's report?
Russ's report, is that it?
Thanks. We have a motion to accept Russ's report as presented. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? Motion carried. All right. Do we have any correspondence or information items, Russ?
Yes, there just is. There's numerous correspondence items in the package. I don't think there's anything there that I'll go over in detail. There is the provincial resolution report card. You will see the resolution in there. I think that I was referring to earlier in regards to weed control on well sites. Some correspondence from Woodland County and Fairview, District MD of Fairview. Ag Forward newsletter from October regarding on-farm plastics. Thank yous from the 4-H kids for the purchases we made. Alice Partnership Advisory Committee, and then lastly an Ag Safe newsletter. So I'll leave it at that, Mr. Chairman, unless there's some specific questions.
Any questions on the information?
Could you explain to me, I guess, these resolutions? So these were brought forward from local ASBs to provincial ASB, and then the provincial ASB gives them a grading. So exactly, so that means it has to, if it's unsatisfactory, you go back to the...
Yeah, so, and they do ask the ASBs for their opinion as well. So we would have an opportunity to respond whether we accept in principle. I forget, there's 3 or 4 different incomplete, unsatisfactory, accept in principle, and whether they're defeated or not. So do they go back if they're not? No, not necessarily. Provincial committee does talk with the departments. That information would go back to them, and it would be up to them if they wanted to supply a further response to the resolution. So the provincial committee does meet with the province. I think once or twice a year. I think they're getting more active with meeting directly with ministers. So yeah.
So they take the resolutions that are approved or approved in principle forward to the...
No, they go forward at a provincial ag service conference. Anything that's approved goes forward to the appropriate ministry, whether it's provincial or federal. And then those responses come back to the provincial committee for grading, and then as well as the individual ag service boards. So we can look at those responses, send a grade, and that's what this is, the final report on any municipalities that responded, as well as the provincial's committee response.
Amber, you had a comment or a question?
So I think, and Russ, correct me if I'm wrong, the grade is more pertaining to the province's response to the resolution, not like to the resolution, if that makes sense. So all of these resolutions were endorsed, except the ones that are noted as defeated. Those would be taken by the provincial ASB to the province, to usually Alberta Environment or Alberta Ag, advocated, and then each ministry, as you can see, like responds to each of the new resolutions. And you will see like some updated responses, because the provincial ASB likely does sort of continue to advocate where they haven't necessarily gotten like a satisfactory response from the ministries. But the grading is more in response to the province's action based on the resolution or their answer.
Yes, sorry, and through the chair, that's exactly right. The grading is strictly on those government responses. So the upcoming conference, which is in January, the resolutions that were approved in the fall at the regions should be coming out probably the 1st of December. So I'll disseminate those out once I receive them, and then they're go forward to the conference where they can be discussed and debated.
Glenn?
Yeah, maybe this is a good time to comment on the South Region ASB. That was on the 6th of October. I had an awful time. It was a Zoom meeting. I just finally couldn't hear anymore. It was what was wrong. If it was my connection or the odd person I could hear, Russ, but I just had a terrible time.
I got kicked off all the
It wasn't
time.
you.
Yeah. So I remember everything like 1 or 2 speakers.
Yeah, no, through the chair, the same with me. There was a point where it was just about a waste to be on there. Unfortunately, I know for the organizing municipality, their intent was and hope was that it would be only live. But I think at the end of the day, they realized that they had to provide that option. So I don't know if they were maybe quite prepared, right, and to test and make sure that everything was okay. So just along with that as well, these regional conferences we're in the South region. From an Ag Service Board standpoint, there's 17 municipalities in our region, and we all take turns hosting the regional conference. I believe we hosted in 2011 was the last time, so it'll be a while before we have to do it again. But yeah, this year was in Cardston, and next year, I can't remember. They announced it at the end, but so, yeah.
I remember going to lives before.
Any other questions? About our members at large? Any questions?
I think I read there's another conference in January?
Yeah,
Did they say that was virtual as well?
the Provincial Ag Service Board Conference will be live in Edmonton at the Westin. As well, historically, there has been an option for members that don't go to that or to go to AgTech. I think this year they actually do fall on the exact same dates. Some years they're just a little bit out, but and AgTech is more, I guess, technical type information, on farm type information. The agenda for this conference I don't think is out yet, but once it is, I'll send that out as soon as I can.
Any other questions? Okay, thanks, Russ, for that. Is there a need for a closed session, Russ? That's just if we have to. Yeah. Okay. Well, that takes us to the
that
end.
we accept the correspondence as information.
Oh, yeah, right. You moved up?
Sure.
So Amber moved to accept the correspondence as presented by Russ. Anyone opposed? Motion carried. Do we have stuff to discuss after lunch? Well, I guess
So, no, if the reports were moved as information, I would move them as information, Russell's.
okay.
Or-
I
and
thought we did that,
Sarah's.
but maybe we didn't. Do you have it in your notes if we did your report in 4.1?
Yeah, previous to the orientation, I guess.
Yeah, the
is what
orientation one, I don't think there was.
Could have said something sooner.
Okay, so we missed that one, so now we have a motion on the floor for that. Any questions? Anyone opposed? Motion carried. Good catch. Thanks, Glenn. All right, we can have, do we do a motion for adjournment? Yeah. Okay. We will adjourn the meeting at 11:53. Thanks, everybody, for coming.